don't understand why you're 40 years old playing the game still. So.
Well, I mean, what game do you think you're going to be playing when you're 40? When do you think you're going to stop playing games? What's the age? What's the cutoff age?
When you're out of high school and college.
You're a high school kid?
Yeah, I'm in high school. Yeah.
How old are you?
Why does it matter?
Well, I mean, you foresee yourself in the future quitting something you love, like video games? Do you not love video games? You just cruise through it.
I mean, I think it's a little bit of a waste of time when you're that old. So.
Well, how do you know? You're not old yet. I mean, I can think of probably reasons that video games would be a waste of time for a high school kid, too. Do you have a 4.0? Are you in honor classes to get more than a 4.0?
No, but...
You know what I'm saying? There's more things you could be doing to improve your life than playing video games, too, right?
Yeah, you study and not play games.
Hey, just recreation, man. Having fun. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
All right, then.
Hola. Oh, awesome as always. No complaints. It's been a pretty laid back week, all things considered. That's one of the nice things about the holiday. Really not too much going on other than some mass insanity that we're going to talk about in a few specific areas. Yep.
See it. Okay. Yes, now it should be working, right? Hello. Sorry about that. It is a constant struggle here.
Yeah.
Because there's so many different things going on. Can you guys hear the music okay, by the way? Let me just make sure.
Thankfully, nobody really missed much. All you really did was just say, hi, here's John.
Yeah. Yeah. Hi, welcome to the show. There we go. All right. So, but yeah, we have a big show lined up for you guys. The music, there's probably a little issue with that. It's okay. I will figure this out. Hold on a second. I'll just add it in here. Maybe that's the issue.
Yeah, just drop it on the stage.
Yeah.
Your OBS.
Drop it on the stage. Maybe I can just play it. Where's it coming out of? Hold on a second. I'm going to fix this really quick. Spotify is a little goofy because it's coming out of multiple destinations. Right. So I think what I got to do is put it in its proper place. It should be here. And let me see if that's working. It sounds better for me now.
Yeah.
I don't know if it sounds okay with you guys.
And just so everybody realizes, I am totally out of sync. I have turned into effectively a anime version of Max Headroom. I'm not going to necessarily sync to what I'm saying. This is quite literally just a video clip because I'm having some extreme tech issues, as we all know. So
we're always having struggles of some kind. So hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Sorry about that. Hail St. Hugo. Hail Saltpeter Taffy. All right. So ultimately, this is really just two topics, but some of them have several subtopics. So that's going to fill our show nicely. So let's not delay much and really get right into it. So here we go. All right. First, we're going to be talking about this whole thing going on with Avowed. I don't even know first of all, let's just lay out the groundwork. What is Avowed? I know it's a new game. I think it's like a fantasy RPG or something, but I really don't know. Do you know, John, what Avowed is?
So my understanding for Avowed is it's Obsidian's take on a fantasy game, and so there's been so much goodwill towards Obsidian for years. A lot of people were just anticipating the release of this thing, and it was going to be one of the best things to come out. I guess it's going to be some point in time next year. I believe sometime 2025. So a lot of people, there was kind of a little bit of a dust up about maybe a week ago, maybe a week and a half, and people started saying, I don't know, there's some red flags here, warning signs, and a whole bunch of people were kind of just saying, you're being too concerned about this. You're just the boy who cried woke about everything now, and you just just settle down, everything will be fine. And then this week took place, and now nobody can defend what is ostensibly one of like this might actually be right up there with a game that although I will say Concord is like we were talking about last week is going to be gaming history for a game that was built up over a course of a decade and then died in 10 days. This is another single player title of sorts, to my understanding. So it will still be able to stick around. It won't get taken off the market, but this thing is DOA already because of this guy in particular and like all of his crazy antics over the course of the development cycle going into this. But yeah, ostensibly it was a game everybody was looking forward to, and now it's just a complete pile of insanity that
Well,
nobody can pick apart.
So there was this game coming out, Obsidian, known for Knights of the Old Republic, right? Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic, and some classics from back in the day.
Old Fallout, New Vegas,
yeah, Fallout New Vegas. And so there was this highly anticipated game called Avowed that was coming out. And apparently, like unsurprisingly, the art director, it already had problems. They tried to hide it, right? They tried to hide the fact that the game was going to have pronouns in it, which tells you that they already know that this is not going to be received well, but they really want to have it in there. They're not willing to take it out. So they just tried to sneak it in. And some people pointed out they saw it because now we have, and this is what I love about this community, this new generation of Gamergate people, they're not letting shit slip by. They're not accepting half measures. They're going to be looking for patterns. They're going to find them and they're going to act accordingly. And the best part about this is it's a very easy thing. And I've said this many times, you don't give money to people who hate you, and you don't accept, their sort of desire to move the needle. That's what they're doing. They're moving the Overton window on reality, and every little step is not little. It is moving towards a bigger goal, right? So let's get into the developer here. All right, so first we're gonna say there was an insider. Let me see if I can find this. This was with Smash GT, I think, broke the story on this one. So there was an insider in the studio at Obsidian, a whistleblower, and I'll read. This comes from Fandom Pulse, although Smash JT broke the story, but this story comes from Fandom Pulse. I like to credit as many people as possible for this because we are the media now, and we basically should be, sourcing each other and giving each other shout outs. So follow the Fandom Pulse Substack if you can. It used to be a website, but I think that they switched to Substack because the websites have way too many ads, and it's just a pain for people to load up. But also the Substack is it's a really good platform for sharing ideas, and you can literally just write articles there, and it doesn't cost anything. So anyway, check out Substack if you don't already know about it. So a former employee at Obsidian Entertainment, the developer behind the upcoming, I'm going to make sure my sound is working here. Okay. The developer behind the upcoming Avowed game described the company's art director, Matt Hansen, as pure evil, while also revealing the company had been captured by woke ideology. YouTuber Smash JT detailed a former employee at Obsidian reached out to him and shared a ton of information about the company's culture, as well as its art director, Matt Hansen, who has openly admitted to discriminating against white men. Smash JT shared that this whistleblower detailed that Obsidian has, quote, devolved into a corporate-driven leftist echo chamber where agenda and ideologies now far outweigh any kind of actual passion for game development, end quote. He added, quote, this former employee, who we'll just call Doe, like John Doe, for the anonymity purposes of this video, describes the workplace completely overrun by external influences, misguided priorities, and a toxic atmosphere that ultimately drove him out. Speaking specifically to Hansen, the whistleblower said, quote, I know how spiteful of a person Matt unfortunately is, and I know he and probably others will try to witch hunt me just to try and make my life hell because they aren't getting their way, end quote. Later in the video, Smash JT relayed that Obsidian's cultural shift began in 2018 when Microsoft purchased the company and made it part of Xbox Studios. He revealed that it began when Microsoft sent out an all-staff email, quote, instituting the introduction of optional but in reality mandatory pronouns in email signatures, meetings, and other various communications around the office. And while initially framed as optional, it quickly became clear that dissent was not welcome. And this is usually how this goes, right? They will always tell you, no, it's not, we're not going to make it mandatory. No, we're not going to force this on you. I'm reminded, let me get political for just a moment. I'm reminded when, what?
I said, by all means. Of course.
Yeah. I am reminded in Canada, if you guys remember, what was the name of the agenda? It had a number, and they were basically putting the recognition of gender and gender expression and gender identity into law in Canadian government, okay? And this was around this time, around 2018. And I remember someone who I know, so you guys know about, Professor Jordan B. Peterson, obviously. He was going to hearings, making the case against putting this in a law because essentially he was arguing that, you shouldn't be compelling speech, and it wasn't just him, though. There was another person, a trans woman named Theron Meyer, who I actually was friends with, and I've had on the show, but way back in the day, multiple times. And Theron was also there making the same arguments, against this. And for everything leading up to this, bill that was put forward, Bill C-16, that's what it was called in Canada. There was the defense of the bill. People were saying, no, it's just being decent. It's just recognizing people's humanity. It's not going to be a big, forced thing. And it went through, and right after it went through, trans activists went on to various news sites and spoke, in Parliament, and basically said, okay, it's law now, so now you have to do as we say or you're going to jail. And then shortly after that, this is what I think really is important here. It wasn't just about pronouns. It wasn't just about being forced to recognize somebody's gender identity. It became what later on? What is Canada doing now? No, not just Canada, the United States, the UK, like Australia. They're basically making it so that if they're essentially, if you're saying that if you are a father of a child, and there's a case, it's Jeff Younger and his son, and you don't want your child to transition as a toddler, the state will take your kid away from you. And that's what they're doing in Canada. Yeah. So like, this is not just about pronouns, guys. This is about the top down control. Okay. And Jeff Younger, he had a son. His wife was like this is like this crazy doctor, didn't even take his last name, by the way.
That
took his son from
insane.
him, and they're actually going through with the transition. Like she is transitioning her son against the will of the father, and obviously against the will of the son too, because how does he know what he wants? He was like 2 years old when this whole thing started. So there is that.
They destroyed that guy's life too.
Like, so about the Jeff
Younger
thing.
I watched a little bit of a documentary on it. There was so much into it that I need to actually finish it up at some point in time. But that guy was put through hell for years. He's still being put through it, quite honestly. Like, I would suggest anybody in the chat that doesn't know what it is, go check it out, because it is some pretty insane stuff, and it's a stark reality of what is to come for the wider populace, because this is the proving ground of
that's why they're going after the kids. I mean, that's literally why. And this is like not, this is for real happening. So when Microsoft puts out an all staff email saying you guys got to put pronouns in your, for your signatures and your meetings and other communications. That is the first step. Like because this is the Mott and Bailey thing, right? If you say, no, I'm not fucking doing that. Like, this is what happened to me. Like, I was on, in Discord. I used to run, I used to, and I'd like to go back to, but I used to run D&D games and tabletop role-playing games for my friends back home, because I don't see them anymore, and this is like one of the only ways that we can kind of get together, catch up, hang out, or whatever. And I was using a tool called Foundry VTT, which is a virtual tabletop. Yep. And I was in the Foundry VTT Discord server, and the only thing I did there was I would just ask questions like about using the program. But when I joined, they asked me to give my pronouns in order to become a member, because guess what?
It's a big deal there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big deal there. They're paused too. And my pronouns I put were fuck/off. Because I was joking, like purely tongue in cheek, but I was like, no, I'm not playing your game. And at first nobody noticed, but then I started asking because I had a question about the program. And so I was asking questions about it. And at that time, I had recently changed my profile picture in Discord to Vivian James, because I was like getting this whole Gamergate 2 thing. I was like, I'm going to start talking about this stuff because it was coming back because of, Cabrutus Rambo and Sweet Baby Inc. Detected and all that. Right. And the community manager there sent me a DM.
Manager on you?
Yeah, I got community managered in the VTT Discord server, and the community manager DM'd me and was like, I want you to explain yourself regarding your pronouns. And I was like, well, I'll just remove them. And they were like, well, I think I'm still going to ban you because I know what your profile picture is. And it's like a far right, neo-Nazi thing.
Whistle.
I was like, Vivian James is of course it is for these people. Of course it is. I'm like relating it to some 4chan post or whatever. And the truth is I've never been on 4chan, but I know who Vivian James is. And so I said, well, I don't think it's fair for me to do that. And I went over their head and I talked to the guy who runs the Discord, and they just banned me permanently. So like, this is not just about pronouns. And I think that Microsoft is putting, there, and I don't look, I know that this story makes it sound like this is all just Microsoft and not Obsidian, but I guarantee you Obsidian's completely complicit.
Oh yeah,
at this point.
Yeah,
so
I mean, well, Matt Hansen himself has been in Obsidian for nearly a decade. So that predates the buyout. But the thing that you're talking about, quite literally, I've seen a lot of people this last week or so saying, "Oh, the death of DEI is upon us. We won, everybody." Woo!
I got that story too.
We kicked his ass, and and it's like no. What happened was this is getting taken out of the private sector, out of financial kind of models, and it's being put into bureaucratic sector through legislative models, which
Bridge.
Right. And so we're just seeing an amorphous shift so that they can still sit there and have plausible deniability and still get across the risk aversion. And now that it's law, what's going to happen is you either comply or you get timetabled at your place of work, and they effectively get to fire you within 30 to 90 days if you step out of line in any way, shape, or form, because you've got now this infraction against you. That's what all this stuff is about, is you either are complicit, or they will ultimately undermine and destroy your life. This is no different than 5 years ago when they told everybody, oh, you need to get a COVID shot to be here and do your job. And and then when you would speak out against it, say, I have my own personal determination, I have rights, they would go and say, oh, well, but you don't. And now they try to act like it wasn't something that was mandated through the state, and they're trying to backpedal on being held responsible from all the lawsuits. But this is something that's even more insidious, because the only reason why we're able to actually do that for COVID now, where people are able to get some measure of reciprocity 5 years on, is because of the fraudulent nature through which it was pushed through. We'll only be so lucky if we can do that with something like this, because they've already set the precedent, like you were talking about with the C-16 in Canada and everything that they're putting through here. This is quite literally the globalist, corporatist control takeover on you. Either are one of us and abide by transhumanism and all that it's going to lead to, or you'll effectively be made homeless, or put in prison, or any form of kind of punishment that they can put on you to make your life incapable of moving forward.
Yep. So going back to the Great Rebellion, sorry, No, not
That's
the
right.
Great Rebellion. This Obsidian thing. All
Yeah.
right, because the Great Rebellion CEO of Cult Games, he did have something to say about it, but I'm gonna come back to that.
Yeah.
I want to finish the main story. So, like, an alleged misgendering incident occurred, and Hansen sent a company-wide email. This is within Obsidian, declaring a zero tolerance for intentional or malicious misgendering. The email's tone was described to me as a passive-aggressive. Of course, it is, because these people are women. Yet fairly threatening. It was a warning to employees who couldn't align with the policies and how they would be facing termination if they decided to go against this innocent thing called pronouns. Was obviously not. That's tongue in cheek. This was a turning point at Obsidian where the company's culture increasingly unwelcomed anyone who didn't fit a specific mold. Smash JT shared that this whistleblower informed him there was only a handful of straight white males, as they put it. I could count them all on one hand. The studio itself was extremely gay and LGBTQ friendly. The ideology began to morph and push and adhere to a certain expected viewpoint. And if you do not ideologically align with these people, you are instantly an outcast, creating an even deeper echo chamber of like-minded thought.
Yep.
So,
and that's when the timetabling begins, and they'll cycle you out.
Yep. After discussing how the company handled COVID and many of the employees led by Hansen refused to return to work, citing their lives could be at risk. Yeah, they wore like 4 or 5 masks. So it's not just that they were gay, but it's also that they were apparently cowards, afraid of getting sick, and of course, they were Marxists. So
yeah, that story. That part of the story where like they talk about how there was the return to work that they did over Zoom or whatever the hell, and people were like livid and shouting at the owners of the company, or not necessarily the owners, but all the management staff and everything like that. And anybody who actually had the capacity to be a decision maker was basically made to sit in the cuck chair of their own management for all these wokies. It's insane.
Exactly. They created the climate that this happened in, and they're surprised. Like that. Exactly. Smash continued. Doe felt that these people needed a real religion to embrace, because without it, we're seeing exactly what happens. They become lost souls, clinging to identity politics as their god. The whistleblower went on to share that many of his fellow employees aren't there anymore to create great games for gamers, but instead to push agenda from the top down to further promote their ideologies. Yeah, I did not see that coming. The corporate chokehold was stifling creativity and stripped games of values for the players, Smash relayed. Leaders like Matt Hansen continue to be empowered to go on unhinged rants on Blue Sky, being extremely racist, attacking gamers, and being protected by the very echo chambers of positive feedback that they have created over the years at companies like Obsidian. So there have been a number. So obviously this guy's paused. Doesn't surprise me. I don't think that he's unique. I think that most of Obsidian is like this, because anyone who isn't like this is either terrified into obedience, or they were fired or quit. So they're either not there anymore, or they're there, but they're laying really low because they really want to keep their job, and they're just kind of nodding and going along, which is basically like, being a slave to this whole ideology. You have to push back at some point. You should have done it right away. These people are not correct. They just have power to some degree, but they should be called out. So what has been some of the response to this? Well, I want to start with one that was in defense of this. So because I made a video about him earlier this week, I gotta bring back David Jaffe again. So
he's starting to become a recurring character.
Yeah, he is. He wants to be like the main character of Gamergate 2. So God of War director David Jaffe defends Avowed art director Matt Hansen. Now, of course, this is like another thing. I don't even know what his defense is. Maybe I'll read and find out, because I think I know what the tactic here is, but I'll read and find out. Okay. So in a recent video uploaded to his YouTube channel that appears to be cut together clips of a recent live stream, Jaffe appeared to respond to a person in the chat and read their comment. Avowed devs said they're making the game really woke to upset Elon and Grums. He then shared his thoughts. I know what you're talking about, Eddie. I know the art director was basically pushing back because Elon got upset and Grums got upset that there are, God forbid, pronouns that you can select or maybe not even select in Avowed. Doesn't matter, not buying it. So the art director got pissed off and the community manager shut her account down. The game's almost done, so I don't really know that they may have just been sort of a pissy kind of statement, he continued. Next Jaffe said, I agree, Morgan. When you say, oh my God, again with this, I know, but it is the news of the day. This is sort of what happens in the gaming world. We're still talking games. I'm still playing lots of games. We're still doing game design discussions, but these are the people that are influencing something. Don't know why, but they are. Well, you don't know why because they're correct and you don't like it. And, you know, we don't want to look at what they're saying. Did you see his recent video when he went after Vera Dark?
I can't say that I've seen that one, but
it was like this morning. It was like this morning.
Okay.
He basically
I'll check it after we get out.
And he's basically saying she doesn't know anything about like the gaming profession because he's the, and this is what my suspicion was. Okay.
Yeah.
So I said this before. The left makes appeals to three primary things.
Yep.
3 things. Okay. One, they appeal to the majority. So like if a majority of people agree with something, the left will use it as if it's something that they like. They will use it to claim that that must mean it's true. They will, secondly, appeal to consensus. So let's say you can't get a majority of normie people on board with something, but instead you have a consensus of experts that all agree on something, you know, like, for example, safe and effective, then they will side with that because they make these appeals to this top-down kind of authoritative source that supports their views. And if they can't do that, the last thing they appeal to is an individual that is experienced or has expertise. It's an appeal to expertise. These are all appeal to authority fallacies. And David Jaffe appeals generally to himself. So when he wants to win an argument that has to do with gaming, he'll say, I know the business. I've been doing it a while. This is why you're wrong, because you're not in the business and therefore you can't know this. And obviously that's not true because we have senses, you know, we have ears so we can hear, eyes so that we can see. We know what's happening and you can't. And the thing is, you know, the stuff that Jaffe had worked on in the past would not have been allowed in this current climate.
Right.
It would not.
He would be you know, bundled in with the rest of us that are seen as being like, you know, He-Man woman haters and all the like that they want to like, you know, throw at us.
He was called that. Like back then, the journalist did come after him in the original Gamergate. Like, so yeah, I mean, I remember they were saying, well, what is it with like something about Kratos being sexist because, you know, you kill like a slave woman to like proceed the game. And they were trying to use that on him because obviously they were all on that, you know, they were drinking the Anita Sarkeesian Kool-Aid. And Jaffe said, that's Bush League and bullshit. I don't hate women, and like, but none of that sunk in. Like it didn't. He just basically, well, not me. Maybe you guys. Maybe Gamergate is sexist. Maybe, you know, Grums is sexist.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, but not me. I'm one of the good ones. I know that, right? So I got
what I find really
go
offensive about this really quickly before I forget is that, like, you know, they want to sit here and say that it's like, well, why are these people influencing? We're not influencing shit. We are, you know, actually just having some reciprocity with an audience that already gravitates towards these things. It's like when they try to go and say, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. No, I analyze agendas. I'm just taking the time to extrapolate what's right in front of me and tell other people that I have no influence on anything. You know, like I'm just sitting here because as we said earlier, we are the media. We're just reporting. We're just using our freedom of speech and our power of the modern press to actually talk about what's going on. It has nothing to do with anything about influence or anything like that. This guy right here, though, you know, David Jaffe is trying to be an influencer by, you know, saying, oh, appeal to my authority, appeal to my experience, appeal to, like, you know, like all this stuff that I have that you don't, but don't believe your own lying eyes because anything that you see is just your perception and your projection. But this guy's got a vested interest in a lot of this bullshit for a variety of reasons, which we'll get into here in a second.
But I know one really big one, but I got
Go
a
ahead.
message from. I want to read some of the chat here, so I'll put it
Yeah.
up on the. That way, you guys participate because I want to get your feedback. So Gabriel Phelan Lucas says COD Cold War had non-binary pronoun options for the player character. Yeah, so does what is it? Cyberpunk 2077 has it.
Mm-hmm.
Baldur's Gate 3 has it. Actually, no, it's Baldur's Gate 3 that has it, not Cyberpunk. I had that wrong. Cyberpunk does let you put a penis on a woman and vice versa, but I think it makes sense because that is a dystopian.
Yeah,
future.
it is the end goal of all this fuckery that
Yeah,
we're
it
seeing,
is.
tossed about right now. And it's not like the thing about, and this is why in Cyberpunk, if it weren't for it would be a genius kind of way of actually talking about what's coming in the future if it wasn't surrounded by all the wokeness within the company itself. CD Projekt Red, to actually go and say that the future is going to be full of all these transed out kind of non-humans. There's not one good story in all of Night City. Like, it's a tragic world. It is completely and utterly dystopian. There's no good outcomes for anyone or anything, because from the moment that you live in that world, you're under authoritative pressures.
Ultimately, the great tragedy of the Cyberpunk game, just briefly, is that people have lost their souls. That's ultimately what it is. Like, that's what it could, like, humanity itself. It's a spiritual problem, not a economic or technological or whatever. All this is talked about in the game, but most people don't seem to get it, except for Johnny Silverhand. And so that's what makes it, I think, so good. But anyway, Cloud Strife says, reading that article about Jaffe, it shows why a lot of these people won't change. They believe they are smarter than you and that you are just too stupid to understand. They can't be wrong in their minds. Yes, that's a good point. It's true. That's what I'm saying. It's like, and there's another element of this. It's called sunken cost. Some people call it sunken cost fallacy. It's like the more you invest in something, the harder it is for you to realize that you might be wrong because you've invested so much in it. So they're not going to be able to do that. This is going to be very hard for them, and it's going to be painful. So anyway, let's see. Blade Kaiser says a good bit of games have pronouns now, and most of them aren't that bad. Heck, you can make a he, she in Baldur's Gate 3. Yes, I was just saying that. I think that we should be. I mean, going forward, I'm going to be on the Grums. Take up the Grums idea, which is like, if any game that has pronouns in it, no matter how good it is, I'm not going to play it. Like, whatever I already own. So I already own Baldur's Gate 3, whatever. It doesn't have pronouns, but you know what I'm saying? Any game that has pronouns, or any game that lets you make a Troon character where it doesn't make sense, I'm not buying it.
Yeah, continue. Oh, well, I was gonna say, I've already, months ago, a year ago nearly now, it seems, when the whole thing was, we're gonna do a 2 to 3 year moratorium on buying AAA games. I don't know what happened to that. Everybody seems so gung-ho for it, but then everybody just, much like a politician that lies on the campaign trail and then changes his thing, and then people say, I'm never voting for that shit again, and then they do 4 years later. It's just like, are people buying? I
haven't bought any new AAA games.
I have not, but what I'm saying is, I'm not doing just a moratorium. I'm completely out of the, it's like, I'll buy independent games through Steam. I'll support a whole bunch of independent artists. We bring guests onto this show, or your channel rather. We bring them onto what we do over on Reality Based on our panel shows all the time. I believe St. Hugo's in the chat right now. CEO of Cult, has been on our show over there before. You've done interviews with it. So that's really what I believe the next step is to de-emphasize these AAA, quadruple A bullshit titles that aren't actually made to tell a story by an agile group that wants to be led by their passions. That's where if we are quote unquote influencers, that's what I'm going to use my supposed influence for anything, is to get people to stop looking to these beyond compromise. They're outright corrupted forms of media. And much like, that woman who stepped out on you and fucked the whole town, and then comes back to you after, like, she's rode hard and ready to, like, just be put out to pasture, and says, I've changed, take me back, and like we can have this wonderful life together. It's like, well, no. Even if I had like every compulsion in my life to, like, be with you before all that happened. How do you undo, like, the damage that's been done to these stories, to these, franchises, to all this kind of stuff, just because, like, like one corpo sells it to another corpo down the line in the future, and they might, like, augment or change something. Now is not the time to reward this insanity or even go back to it. Like, we need to cut the cord in so many areas of media and actually just become our own parallel economy of, working with each other at this grassroots level, making our own games, making our own movies, making our own, how many people watch YouTube now, all the time. And so that's where my mindset is already firmly entrenched. And the only way that I'm ever going to watch anything new movie wise or anything like that is I'll take a trip to Switzerland and, pick it up for free. And then, and then I'll just have a copy of it. And, like, for whatever my own devices are, but I'm not paying for one scintilla of this bullshit. No way, shape, form, or how.
Well, no, not me either. I mean, like, the purpose of what I'm doing here is like twofold. Like, one is to tell people what they should, consider. I don't want to tell people how to spend their money, but to tell people, like, to consider what is going on and why it's happening. This is, like, ultimately really important. Where does this come from? Because ultimately this didn't just come from nowhere. And, like, what these people, like, what their way of thinking is. And so that consumers or customers can make an educated decision. And at the same time, I can point them in, the direction of things that would make better alternatives or people who are doing good work. And I think that, that's what I've been doing with these It's Based Game Jam guys. They set up a game jam. They've announced they're doing another one, and I'm going to be involved with that. And I think that that's okay. I mean, we want our culture, not just our games, but we want a healthy culture. And I think there is
Oh, go ahead, continue.
No, I'm saying there is a vibe shift happening now.
Okay,
I think that people are making their voices heard, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this. This story, because you're seeing more people who have louder voices making their opinions known, regarding Matt Hansen, the director of Avowed. So I'm not just whining about Avowed because I've never played it, so I don't really have a dog in that fight.
We're talking about the state of play in general.
Yeah, we're talking about the state of our culture.
Yeah, that's a quick aside. Next time you're talking to Game Jam guys, remind them that they had spoke to me about this next Game Jam, about being one of the judges for the upcoming thing this time, and let them know that I'm still very much, on board. Just have someone catch up with me through the DMs or whatever.
Will do. I will. St. Hugo says he's still here. Well, welcome to the stream again. Maureen Ribarek says, though, is it all right to buy Stalker 2? I don't know.
Yeah, use your own discernment.
Dean was playing it because it was on Xbox Game Pass, and that's actually something else I wanted to mention too. So here's what I think is going to happen, because these people are pretty confident that they can do whatever they want, put pronouns in, like they literally, with regards to this thing, I believe Grums said, I'm drawing a line, I'm rejecting a game that has pronouns in it, right? And then Elon Musk said, he was sort of reposted Grums and said, having pronouns in a fantasy video game is utterly unacceptable. And of course, Matt Hansen basically was thrilled that he got Elon Musk's attention, even though it was bad attention, but that they liked this because, the guy who basically did everything that they wanted in terms of like trying to protect the environment. Well, he has the wrong opinions about culture, so he is now the enemy. And Matt Hansen and some other actor or activist on X basically said we should start adding pronoun options to all of our games just to annoy these guys. Now, of course, go ahead, good luck with that, whatever. They're probably still going to be flops. But I will say there is a reason why they feel so confident to do this. their goal is to essentially create a say an ecosystem where you don't actually own anything.
Right.
So it's all like they're just gonna make you buy it anyway. They're just gonna make it free. Let me give you an example of something that's already happened. Years ago, when Comicsgate was going on, this was basically, and I was one of the early adopters of that before it was even called Comicsgate. I was, really into comics, and I hated what the decisions that the big two were doing. That is the big two being DC and Marvel. And when Comicsgate was going on, people were wondering how is it that comics sales were like in the tank, like they were, comic book shops were shutting down. Small business owners were losing their business because nobody was there. Gary Buechler of nerdrotic.com, he is one of these people. He had a comic shop, right? He lost his shop because nobody wanted to buy their woke garbage. And another friend of the channel, RJ, from a channel called, why am I forgetting what it's called? But anyway, the guy's name is RJ, the Fourth Age. And he was talking about how the whole thing was always it's been made into this sort of top-down, government-funded effort. And it doesn't matter that people don't buy the books, because what their plan was to put comics that had their ideological crap in it in libraries, and make them available as public, things. Put them in schools, put them in libraries. Put them in places where it's supposedly free, but you are essentially still indoctrinating children with these books, and it doesn't matter if it sells or not. And they're basically, when they do that, by the way, Marvel still gets paid. They just get, and DC still gets paid. They just get your taxpayer dollars. In the exact same way that Dustborn turned out to be funded by the government. So I think that that's the direction
and the
they
same
want to
way
go in.
last week when we talked about Concord, and like Sony getting their big tax break, even though nobody bought that game, we're still paying Sony to give them restitution for their bad investment. It's coming out of our pocket.
So I think that this is why they can say with some confidence that they're just gonna go ahead and do it anyway. I mean, think about it. Like, this all started when, in my opinion, it all started when Microsoft created Xbox Live, way back on the Xbox 360 days. When they came up with Xbox Live, they started it from the premise of, well, look, we're going to give you dedicated servers. And they did have better servers than the PS3 did, because the PS3 was a competitor, right? And they didn't have a paid subscription model on Sony's PlayStation. But Xbox did. And I remember I had friends that loved they were like Xbox stans. Like, they were just like all about it, right? And I was always, the only reason why I was even like more of a PlayStation person was because I liked the games. I didn't really have an opinion on the company itself or whatever. I just felt that the library was better. On the PS2, obviously it was better. On the PS3, I thought it was pretty solid.
Xbox. I liked the first Xbox because to me it seemed like the spiritual successor to the Dreamcast, as what Sega's next system would have been. Because when all the first titles came out for the original Xbox, the big black beast, you could actually it ran on a hacked version of Windows CE, was what was on the Dreamcast. And so there was already some kind of inroads to them, like making like this kind of transition from Sega, kind of like becoming Microsoft. In terms of like the hardware and everything like that, they like just shared all their information with them. So I enjoyed the original one, but I remember specifically when they transitioned.
Go ahead.
When they went from the original Xbox to the Xbox 360, one of their first steps where I noticed that they're doing the thing that everybody was concerned about. When the original Xbox came out, it had the hard drive on it, and I always thought that was one of the most defining traits. And so when the 360 started having the detachable hard drive, or one that was like a digital only system, it was right then that I knew that this thing was slowly but surely going to become an even worse thing. And I had the 360 because it was still backwards compatible and everything like that. But once they put out the Xbone, and they wanted to basically put a surveillance system inside your house, I've never bought, and I will never buy another Xbox-based system.
For sure.
I don't pay for Game Pass. I will not do it. And with the way that Sony's done stuff this last go round, I'm done with Sony now too. you know, to the point to where I probably won't even renew my PSN account when it expires. I think in February this coming year, and I'm just, you know, I'm content. I'm happy with my Steam Deck, and everything that it does is, you know, worlds beyond any of those other things. And even if I ever have a compulsion for whatever reason to do those other things, I can do it on my Steam Deck.
Yeah, so like I also own an Xbox. I still have it. I own an original Xbox. I never got the Xbox 360, and I didn't have a lot of games on my Xbox. I didn't like the controller on the original Xbox, so. But I do have one. I also have a GameCube and a Dreamcast. So I kept my old consoles.
I used to have all those, but then I moved back from Seattle this last spring. Anyways, I'm
but that's okay. Well, my point is that this is one of the reasons why they're okay with, you know, basically like not selling games, because what their I think their ultimate goal is to put it, essentially set it up as a publicly funded thing that will still take money out of your pockets, and then or they'll do it in little services. So like I said, Xbox Live came out, I had friends that were like, no, this is just a better network, and I was like, yeah, but you got to pay for it. And the problem with this is that once if enough people start paying for Xbox Live, then Sony is going to do the same thing. No, but Sony's going to do it too, because why wouldn't they? And sure enough, they did. And so when, you know, then you had PlayStation Plus, and they were essentially trying to compete with Xbox Live by offering what? They had like this thing where they were offering you free games. Like, oh, every month you're going to get like some free games. And then Xbox did the same thing. They're like, well, we got to do that too. And then we got Xbox Game Pass, and you know, all these different levels of PlayStation Plus stuff. And so
first
now
it's
we're
free,
at this,
but you're gonna have to like keep paying for the service, and that was the beginning of the subscription model and live-based services. Yes.
Yep, and now we're getting it in all kinds of different ways. Well, what are all the cloud gaming services, right? Like GeForce Now, and I think Microsoft's Xbox Game Pass is that a cloud-based thing? I have no idea.
That is cloud-based. You can quite literally, without even owning Xbox hardware these days. That's why I said if I was really, you know, wanting to throw my money at a Game Pass, I can use quite literally my Steam Deck. I can use my cell phone with, you know, I've got a backbone controller. And it can have access to all that kind of stuff. The PlayStation Portal just made an update so that now, rather than just doing local-based LAN screen grabbing, basically, is what because the PlayStation Portal, it just it quite literally just grabs the URL feed that is being broadcast. It's the exact same technology that we're using with Video.Ninja. It's an authenticated piece of hardware that has been pre-authenticated, and so it just sets up a trust so that you can see what's going on the processing. And then finally, this last week or last month, they now have it updated so that if you have a PSN premium account, like the highest level, which is like I think nearly $200 a year, then now you can actually play their cloud-based games. But again, none of this is like, you know, actually a good thing, because having to play your games off of some centralized servers or even decentralized servers, but anything that you're going to do, there's always going to be levels of latency. And so it doesn't matter how good the games look or anything like that. In theory, the way that these things play out, even if you've got like, you know, like NVIDIA now, and like you use their high ass end systems, and there's always a level of latency, and it never ends up being a good playthrough. And look at NVIDIA now as like how, like, you know, unless you were one of the people who bought the founder pack and bought in right at the beginning, I think you're capped out at like 100 hours of playtime a month now, and that's even if you pay for their most premium account level.
Yeah.
So this is all just you know, in some kind of, you're going to lose out in the long run if you continue to do business with these companies that operate in this manner, which is why we have to start just, you know, giving our care and support to the independent developers.
Yeah. So, and also if you're able to like get physical media, physical media. So I know that that's going away, but maybe we'll find some way of like taking the digital media that we own and putting it on something physical, you know, like a disc or something. I don't know. Maybe there's a way to do that. I'm sure that there's some person who's way smarter than me that's also working on it. So David Jaffe, let's get into why I think this is particularly interesting. I made a video about him earlier this week where he basically tried to imply, because he's being passive aggressive as well, that people who don't want to buy, you know, like Star Wars Outlaws or Dragon Age the Veilguard, well, you know, they're just bigots, or maybe they hate black people, or maybe they hate women, or whatever it is. And but he didn't like directly do it, because then, you know, then he could get called out on it and he would actually have to defend himself. So instead, he just implies it, and then he lets that sit. It's very cowardly. It's very sad. And it's not true. I mean, like, no one can make you buy something. And then he tried to make a video with, it was all cope, where he was like, you guys are missing out on like a good story. Don't you want a good story? I thought you were gamers. And it was really pathetic. And then
this is, some woke white woman bullshit.
Yeah, and then recently, well, I made a video responding to it, and I put some links in the description of my video where I initially talked to David Jaffe way back in 2014, and I'm bringing this up because I want to talk about what's happened since then. So I don't know if you guys know this, but when I spoke to David Jaffe in 2014, it was in the wake of some pushback he got during Gamergate 1. From, you know, from the media, like, that was basically trying to frame him as sexist, but also from Gamergaters that, you know, their heckles went up when he called something sexist that couldn't possibly be sexist. And he didn't understand where it came from. And I invited him on, and he agreed to come on, and he'd been on our show 3 times back in those days. But at the time, he was trying to make the case that sexism is bad because I have daughters, and he had like 2 daughters. Okay. And of course, most of the people who host the show with me are women as well. Not that it should matter, but they were essentially like on making the case against, you know, against feminism and like against these notions that are sort of built into our consciousness, you know, by default about like the relationship between men and women. And he was not really that receptive, but he was at least cordial. But at the time, he was defending his daughters, okay? Now, what's happened since then? Well, I'm glad you asked. David Jaffe, one of his daughters is trans now.
Right.
And I'm going to share this video. It's kind of short. Well, it's like 5 minutes, but I'm going to go ahead and share it anyway, because I think that we should see this. And this is him. He's saying, this is in 2023. I am the proud dad of an amazing trans son. Either get on board with it or unfollow me, because I can't with these people anymore. What you think is sport or fun is actually cruel to your fellow humans, including kids, ! And I can no longer engage with folks who engage with me in bad faith. Remember, for pointing out that like your kid should not be considering transition, that's the cruelty.
Yeah, you're a parent. You're supposed to steward the young and the naive and the inexperienced to a point that they, through their own discernment,
not
make
pruning your kids. No, that's not the cruelty, right? It's the fact that we have opinions on it that don't support your child unquestioningly, and you don't know. And this is where the sunken cost thing comes in. So on Honey Badger Radio, I talk a lot about men's rights and men's issues. One of the biggest issues that we discussed is male genital mutilation, also known as circumcision. But we call it male genital mutilation because it is traumatic, it is unnecessary, and it should not exist, okay?
And it causes a whole bunch of issues with sexual relationships people have nowadays. Because I mean, like, part of the reason that men have so many, like, you know, sensitivity issues and this and that is because, quite literally, like, part of their body, their anatomy, was stolen from them before they could defend themselves.
And one of the other problems with this is kind of like a similar situation to our food, where a lot of people who think that they are doing what is best by buying food that they think is healthy are actually consuming food that is basically poison. But it's not their fault because they don't know. And they're trying to do their best, right? And they're not informed well, because like who decides like what is healthy? The Food and Drug Administration, the FDA.
But they're captured as fuck.
Absolutely, and they have been for a long time. So what happens if you invest in an idea that you think is good, but it turns out to be absolutely disastrous, and someone tells you that you have made a mistake? Well, most people are going to respond unpleasantly, okay? And this is why I mentioned circumcision. So back in like 2014 or 2015, when I was doing Honey Badger Radio, we were talking about circumcision. There was a viral video that was going around of an intactivist. Intactivists are basically guys that they're activists that support the banning or ending of circumcision. Okay.
Yeah.
And
one of my friends
they're
is
called
one of those.
Oh, oh, that's cool. So an intactivist wants to keep boys intact. That's where it comes from. And he was on the street, and they usually, some of these guys are, I think they're called like the bloodied men. They wear all white and have like a blood stain on the crotch area. To sort of like, that's how they get attention. But there was one guy on the street, and this father approached him and threatened him with violence. He threatened to kick his ass because he was saying, did you circumcise your son? Because he was up there making the pose, and the guy's like, what are you guys doing? And it turned into an argument, and then the intactivist said, did you circumcise your son? And the dad, the father that was passing by, he basically attacked him. He tried to assault him.
Right.
And the reason for this is because he did circumcise his son.
Yep.
And he doesn't want to face what that means. He doesn't want to face the reality of that. So David Jaffe defends pronouns because he agreed to transition his daughter.
Right.
And he is going to realize that he was wrong, and it's going to be very painful for him.
Yep.
Yes.
And when you think about, like, when it comes to like the thing you're talking about, just a quick little tangent side note, one of the people who drives forward the whole aspect of, circumcising children is Oprah Winfrey. She quite literally sells
She
foreskin
sells their
cream.
foreskin cream. Exactly. Yeah, we know about that. We know about that. And I bet that's just the tip of the iceberg. No pun intended. Yeah. And so here's the unfortunate truth about the whole transitioning kids thing. Most of these kids are probably going to unalive themselves when they realize that they made a mistake, and their parents are just going to blame, I don't know,
us.
Like they're not going to blame themselves.
And the
they're going to
media,
blame us.
like,
They're going to, They're not going to blame themselves. They're not going to say, I shouldn't have supported this. Some of them may figure this out, but I think that most people are going to try to pass the buck, and they're not going to take. And that's what I think Jaffe is doomed to, that experience. Like, his kid is going to unalive herself, and he is going to pay the price, and he's probably going to be pretty pissed off.
Yeah, a lot of these parents have what's being referred to as Transhausen by proxy.
Yeah. Like Munchausen by proxy, yeah. A Norwegian says his daughter could very well disown him when she realizes what he let happen to her. Yes.
And which is all the more reason why they double down on it and go along with the, just getting that ideological mindset into their children. Like how many Hollywood mothers seemingly have Megan Fox.
Like
Megan Fox has Megan Fox has 3 sons that she claims are women. Charlize Theron has 2 adopted
Will
boys
Smith's
that are now being
actual
raised.
Biological kids.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, it makes no sense too, especially when you're adopting. Is like, you're going to adopt some kids and then you're going to trans them out because why exactly? And it's because when they talk about what is influencers, these are the people that pull that shit. It's not you or I. Like, we're just people that live here on the ground. They're the ones who are, up in their elitist fucking ivory towers of getting high, insulated on their own farts, thinking that everything that they say, think, and do can't be questioned, and everyone should just fall right in line and go along with it. That to me sounds like what is a deluded, debased, detached influencer, more so than people that are actually just talking about living here in the real world.
All right, so this is the sunken cost. This is why David Jaffe can only double down, because he won't have the will to face the truth of what he has done to his child by allowing her to be groomed into this ideology.
Right.
and thinking that it's like just being a good liberal, because that's what it is, right? And I say this like I'm being very intentional with my words. The problem with liberals, not leftists. Leftists are the cancer, but liberals are the permissive ones. Liberals see their tolerance as a virtue. They not only see it as a virtue, they see it as the highest virtue. So when they say, well, look, I'm just like letting people do their thing, you know, no, like whatever, I'm cool with gays and blacks and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
They're trying to place themselves on a moral high ground above everyone else because they're so tolerant. And that, of course, it doesn't actually mean anything if you're not able to determine the difference between right and wrong or good and evil, which he's not able to do. So he is essentially he's permitting his child to destroy herself. And when it comes, like, well, let's say when the check clears on what she has done, he is not going, it's going to be very hard for him to be able to say, I did that.
Right.
And I get it, man. Look, I don't have kids. I couldn't imagine how hard that would be, but I wouldn't let that happen to my kid. So, but anyway, so this is why he's fighting with us. And I think that's the important takeaway. Meanwhile, let's see, we got the Obsidian, or I'm sorry, in response to the Obsidian whistleblower, we have some positive stuff going on too. So let me put this back on the screen. Well, actually, this is the wrong image. We'll go back to this dude. So we have the Great Rebellion CEO, Roland Moritz, the founder of Cult Games. And he spoke exclusively with Phantom Pulse. I had him on my show if you want to look. I did an interview with Cult Games, 2 members, Roland and Dean. And check it out. It was a pretty good conversation. I was really glad to have him on, and I appreciate them. And also,
he was on Reality Based, I think, around a month ago.
Yeah, and also check out the game, the Great Rebellion, if you haven't seen it. The music from the game is playing in the background of this stream. So it's a great game. It's like a roguelike. Yeah, like a roguelike.
In terms of narrative, and not just actually, and not, I'm not going to say narrative, because narrative design. You can't spell DI without, narrative design. Like it's like that was the onset to all this fuckery. So it has an amazing story. It actually has a not the message, but a actual legitimate message of what the future looks like. For as much as we sat here and said, hey, Cyberpunk's not that bad of a game. This is actually better than Cyberpunk. And if they ever find a way to like do this game in a 3-dimensional kind of setup, as like some reworked, I think it's a great way it is being a 2D platformer. But if there's anybody out there that like's kind of hesitant because of that, I would still say, it's in terms of games that I've played in the last few years, it is by far heads and shoulders above most of them, because it's actually talking about something that's legitimate and meaningful, and it's not just running around and shooting shit for the sake of running around and shooting shit. Yep. No, definitely. It's got a story, but it's also fun to play. It's like a different kind of experience than Cyberpunk, but yeah, I say it's a good game. You should definitely check it out. And it's on sale right now, I believe. It is on sale right now. Yeah, I paid full price. I didn't care, but I got a free copy. It's on sale. But I bought the music because the game was so good. There you go. All right, so Moritz spoke with Phantom Pulse, and let's see what he said. He said, wait, where are his comments on this? I'm trying to find it. Hanson, respond to these comments on Blue Sky. No, that's different. Moritz reacted to all this, telling Phantom Pulse, quote, the whole thing is another revealing look into how deep the gaming industry has been subverted by radical leftist ideologues and, quite frankly, extremely entitled people who get used to getting their way every single time over the last years. Yeah, and also the good, simpy liberals that go along with it. The fact that Obsidian's art director is lashing out in the unhinged way that he did is the sign of a person who is not in the least willing to engage with any criticism or self-reflection and is, in short, spoiled. These things have been going on for years behind the scenes, and getting a backlash and being dragged into the light is still a new experience for these ideologues. He then said they have to contend with a simple fact. Games that do well to appeal to their audience are naturally successful. Games that spite their audience are naturally
unsuccessful. This is a factor in game design from the ground up, as we see in Obsidian's art director baking his controversial opinions into the game at a fundamental level, which are at odds with the culture. It's unstable, it's childish. We make games that are enjoyable because of our culture, not out of disdain for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said, this has also been a guiding principle in the development of my game, The Great Rebellion, and there is a huge amount of gamers waiting for studios to make games for the love of the medium, again, first and foremost, and have enough of a leftist ideology being shoved into each and every beloved franchise. He predicted, quote, I see a very bright future ahead for studios that return to gaming, return gaming to what it should be. On a deeper level, I think that the reason I think why all these issues about pronouns and gender identity and whatnot are attractive to many people is that they give them a sense of belonging and purpose that has been entirely stripped of them. Maybe also a sense of power if they belong to the right oppressed minority for social status. The connecting forces of nationhood, family, and religion have been torn away for a life of relativist freedom, resulting ultimately in nihilism because these people lack an outside force or structure to order the meaning behind their existence and struggle. These fake struggles with sexuality, etc., are ultimately meaningless and depressing, which reflects in the amount of mental illness and often its fetishization you will find among the so-called woke crowd. That they aim their vitriol at Elon is a blind failing for an effigy to burn and take out your minute of hate on. Elon has merely opened up the floor and slightly lessened censorship in public discourse.
Mm-hmm.
Progressives are realizing for the first time since their capturing of the institutions that they are not getting their way. So that was very based. And I made a mistake earlier when I said Dean was the other guy. It wasn't Dean. Dean was part of a different team. I apologize for to Cult Games and to the guys, the Dean guys over at It's Based for making that mistake. But anyway. So yeah, those are his thoughts on that. I don't know if you want to say anything to that before I get into the next bit. That is another response.
Yeah. No, I mean, like it's a very sound statement. I think that it's what else can you really add to it other than just dogpiling? Like we're a little over halfway through the show, so we'll just keep moving on.
Yeah, well, it's okay. There isn't a whole lot left, but all right. So I'm going to read through a couple more reactions to this that are in the positive. And the reason why I'm doing this, by the way, guys, is to show that there is a shift happening. Like people are speaking out more and more. They're really sick of this crap. The election was a referendum on the whole thing, but more than that, like culturally, you can see it. Like people are losing money left and right. It doesn't mean woke is going away. No. I know that it's not, but the point is that people are making the choices where they're able to. And I think we're going to see more and more improvements.
Which honestly is why it's more important than ever for us to actually be the media and like they want to call us influencers because they're trying to undercut. This is just like, when the word conspiracy theorist emerged decades ago as a way to try to undercut people that were trying to point out the fuckery that was about. And so that's what all this is that's currently happening is we know as a society here in America and abroad throughout the world in general that these woke agendas are coming from the top down and people are rejecting it en masse wherever, however, in any way, shape, or form they can, which is why they're going to try to stitch it into the legislation to do it through these covert means, any way that they can, subtly kind of nudge you into not being able to actually have a choice. That's ultimately what they're going to try to do, which is why we will pound this drum harder and harder with each passing week until more people are actually aware that, they've been made unaware specifically for the purpose of making it seem like this is something that is coming from, a wider stance of acceptance. Because much like the dead internet theory, people are getting this catered kind of manufactured, tailored sense of what reality is through the media, which is why they want to censor us all and shut us down and prevent us from actually speaking out against it. Because when people actually know, when people have better, opportunities, they often make better choices. And the only way for people to have better opportunities in this instance is to have a better understanding of what it is that they're being asked to, purchase and, subject themselves to in the long term.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we got another reaction, and this one is kind of interesting too, because it is from the former Obsidian Entertainment founder. Is he the former? No, actually, he is the former co-owner and creative director, Chris Avellone, who reacted to this. He was with Obsidian when they gave us, Outer
Good games.
Worlds and KOTOR and stuff like that. And he basically said that he has called for legal action against the company for alleging discriminatory hiring practices. Remember, Matt Hansen said that we need like fewer crusty white dudes. So he's basically saying you should sue. And I hope that people do, especially people who used to work at the company that found themselves unemployed. That was one thing I really wanted to mention really quick. And then also, I have one other thing that is also related, sort of, in the broader sense. And again, I think this is a good thing that we're seeing. So you guys ever heard of Doug TenNapel? Doug TenNapel is the creator of Earthworm Jim. And that was a very, popular game way back in the PS1 days, I think.
Yeah, it was like early 90s. I loved this game. This was
he's also the guy behind Neverwood or whatever, and Skull Monkeys. Do you guys remember that? Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, this game was transcendent for me. I think this was the first game that I got for my Super Nintendo, specifically that was my game. Like, we had other games on it, but this one was, this was all mine.
Yeah. So the culture war hit video games hard this year, and Doug TenNapel, who basically started talking about this stuff during Comicsgate's beginning, because he was creating his own comic book. It was very cool. It was about all these different cryptids, like Bigfoot and the Jersey Devil and the Chupacabra, and they were all like a team of cryptids. I think that's a really great idea, right? But anyway, I can't remember the name of it. It was like Bigfoot Jim or something like that. Or no, not Jim, but it was Bigfoot something. Or Sasquatch, I don't know. But anyway, the point is, he'd been talking about this a while ago. And we already know about all these failures. But then this week, Elon Musk announced, and this is going to be the next story we cover. Elon Musk announced that he is going to be working through Grok to make AI video games, saying too many game studios that are owned by massive corporations. XAI is going to start an AI game studio to make games great again. This prompted Doug TenNapel, the creator of Earthworm Jim, to enter the conversation, as he's been a vocal conservative within the video game space for decades, as well as comics and other cultural, areas. TenNapel posted to X, quote, "I created Earthworm Jim and got Game of the Year in 1994. We made the Neverhood, Skull Monkeys, and worked on scores of other simple, fun, wonderful games before teams got bloated and inefficient. Being a conservative Christian caused a secular progressive culture to end merit-based content creation. Most of the best gamers I know were conservative, had a killer work ethic. We were frugal with our budgets and only wanted to make games everyone would love. But my old pals are scattered or pinned under EA. Even worse than the woke mind virus is the inefficiency of game creation, where the money doesn't make it on the screen. Small, lean teams could turn the entire industry around," he concluded.
Yep,
As
which
conservatives,
is the thing that I've been talking about.
Yeah, we know. Yes, absolutely. Well, that's what we need. We want teams like back when Blizzard was, when they were putting out nothing but hits, and it was just like a small team of guys.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway,
Great Rebellion, again, to bring that into the conversation real quick. That's another game that's made by a small team of focused, passionate, caring individuals that want to just tell their story.
Yep. So I mean, so that Doug TenNapel has our back as well, and I think that's awesome. And I think that there's one. Let me see. I want to make sure I didn't miss that. The games. I mean, we know the games industry woke is not dead. We know that, because they're going to stay committed. Because again, they can only double down, double down. So we have to just get ready for that. Don't worry about it. We got our own thing going. Support the people who are doing the work that we want, and spread the word about them. Try to raise them up if possible. And that's what that's what I've been doing over at the It's Based with those guys, helping them out, because I think that they're making the conversations that we should be having. They're helping foster that. And I think they're doing good stuff. And one of the ways that I do that, well, I'll talk about the end when I talk about what we got coming up next.
Yeah.
But let's get into the next story here. So Elon Musk announces plans to create an AI game studio to make gaming great again. MGGA.
I love that's the image from the "Go fuck yourself"
Go
video.
fuck yourself, right? Go fuck yourself. Hey, Bob. The world's richest man has apparently had enough. Elon Musk today announced plans to create an AI game studio to make gaming great again. So we know that he is one of the top-ranked Diablo 4 players, which is like one of the things. He had been vocal.
I joke that he's one of the few people who can actually afford to play number 4.
Yeah, I know. He was like a big fan of. I shared a video a while back where he was on Lex Friedman's podcast, and they were talking about Lex Friedman was asking about video games, and he said that his favorite games to play are Elden Ring and Diablo 4, and so I thought that was really interesting because he obviously has, I think, in terms of like, he has good taste in terms of like what he wants to experience. I never played Diablo 4. I'm not saying that it's good. I don't know, but I know Elden Ring is good. So, and he says that these are the kind of experience he wants. And he's also been, he's a really good defender of video games as a hobby because it's one of the ones that's the easiest for people to shit on. Because they're like, oh, well, you're wasting your time or whatever. It's for kids. Like, no, like that is not the case.
Which is bullshit in and of itself. That is such a fallacy-based argument because mental plasticity, hand-eye coordination, just the ability to do pattern recognition, everything that actually keeps you, mentally fit in your health and wellness